Special counsel Jack Smith is now asking the Supreme Court to decide a question he says is at the heart of American democracy, whether Donald Trump, who's facing criminal prosecution for his actions while president, is protected by presidential immunity. Smith is circumventing the traditional appeals process in his criminal case against the former president, calling it a matter of, quote, imperative public importance. He's asked the court to respond to his request by next Monday. Trump's federal election interference trial is set to begin in March, but the start date will likely be delayed. Now a question of how much.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. So I think anyone's still reasonable, and that's left or right. Although admittedly, there's not very many still reasonable people on the left anymore. But anyone that's still paying attention, anyone that still has the ability to critically think, I think recognizes that Jack Smith is not a normal special prosecutor, right? Jack Smith is more of an operative, more of a political tool. And Jack Smith definitely has a plan. And I think it's a plan that goes above and beyond the plan of a prosecutor and a case. We've all thought this. We've all suspected it. And, they want to make us sound like we're crazy for thinking it. But now Jack Smith's plan to destroy Donald Trump has pretty much been revealed by one of the most unlikely sources, and one that I think maybe, just maybe, the people on the left who are still curious, the very, very few people on the left who are still curious if everything is as they're told, maybe they'll actually listen, right? Everything that this guy has done, Jack Smith I'm talking about, has basically been in a rush. But why do you rush justice? And should you? Do you rush justice? I don't think you do. And if you question, honestly, whether he's rushing or not, just look at the classified documents case. He was appointed at the very, very same time that the special prosecutor, whose name that no one even knows, by the way, was appointed to look into Joe Biden's classified document mess. Now, obviously, those cases are very, very different. Joe Biden had about 8 times the classified documents that Trump did, and his documents span all the way back to the 1970s, which is a major, major issue all by itself. But still, the timing should not be that far off, and it feels to me like Jack Smith is rushing. He rushed through the investigation, he rushed through the indictment process, and he's in such a rush to see Donald Trump prosecuted before the election that he wants to even rush past the federal appellate court that actually should be pretty favorable to him. He wants to do all this because I think he wants to make sure that this case is over and done with before Donald Trump is back in the White House and able to pardon himself. That alone, if that is true, proves that everything the man is doing is political. It's putting politics before justice. It is so freaking blatant. It's so bad and it's so backwards that even CNN agrees with us.
Do you agree with me that Smith and Judge Chutkan are acting based on the election schedule?
I do agree with you, Michael, and I think any fair-minded observer has to agree with that as well. Just look at Jack Smith's conduct in this case. The motivating principle behind every procedural request he's made has been speed, has been getting this trial in before the election. Let's take a couple examples. The trial date. The average federal conspiracy and fraud trial takes about 1.5 to 2 years between indictment and trial. In this case, we have dozens, hundreds of January 6 rioters caught on video, straightforward cases. They too were given about 1.5 to 2 years between indictment and trial. Jack Smith originally requested a trial date for Donald Trump, a far more complex case, 5 months out. He wanted a January trial. It was set for 2 months later. So Donald Trump is being given far less time to prepare than other defendants. And the actions this week. Jack Smith won an argument on immunity in the district court and then went right to the Supreme Court. I think a right move. I think the smart move. The only reason you ask the Supreme Court to do that on an expedited basis is if you're racing against the clock. And Jack Smith clearly is doing that here.
Okay, I referred to the election as the Voldemort of the petition that he filed. Why not say that? Why not simply say there's an election on the horizon and I'm afraid this guy's going to get away?
You will never hear either Jack Smith or Judge Chutkan utter the E word, election. They will not specifically say it. Instead, they use this sort of euphemistic language about the need for resolution, that kind of thing. Here's why I think Jack Smith is not willing to do it. 2 reasons. First of all, DOJ rules, unwritten and written, both say you are not supposed to do anything that could impact an election. In fact, you are supposed to affirmatively try not to take steps that might impact an election. And the second thing, and I think Jack Smith is right about this, is if he is to say, okay, Judge, we really need to try this case before the election, Donald Trump is going to seize on that aggressively. He's going to say, see, folks, when I tell you this is political, Jack Smith has now admitted that he wants me tried before the election, and that's political. So I think he's very wary of that.
Okay, so then evaluate we agree. We agree that he is acting, Judge Chutkan is acting with an eye toward the election calendar. Now I want to hear Ellie Honig assess the propriety of him doing exactly what he's doing. Because on one hand, you could say, well, he's being political. On the other hand, I guess you would say, Ellie, like you probably back in the day, he's an aggressive prosecutor. He's worked the case up. He wants to get before a jury.
Right. I don't like the artifice here. I don't like the game playing, the wordsmanship that we're seeing. I think Jack Smith ought to just come out and say it or not. Here's the arguments both ways. First of all, if Jack Smith is trying to get this case tried before the election, and he clearly is, look, that is political. I mean, the counter argument would be, well, Jack Smith just wants the American voters to have resolution before they go to the ballot box. And I understand that. As a voter, I would like to know. But here's the problem with that argument, Michael. Jack Smith doesn't just want to get this trial done and let the chips fall where they may and let the consequences be what they can be. He's the prosecutor. He believes this case. He wants this case to result in conviction. And so his position isn't just, well, I want this case tried before the election. His position really, as a practical matter, is I want Donald Trump convicted before the election. I have no problem with the first part of that. It's his job to want and try to convict Donald Trump now that he's indicted. But the second part of that, before the election, that's where it crosses the line to the political, in my view.
Yeah, so you guys see that. And remember, you know, when they first announced Jack Smith as special prosecutor, right, we were told that the guy's beyond reproach, unimpugnable. He's all about, he's by the book. And in order to see justice done, he's going to take time away from his very important work of hunting and trying war criminals, international war criminals. He's going to take time off from that to come back to the U.S. federal government and make sure that every I is crossed and every T is dotted. And most of us were smart enough to not believe it then. And of course, why would you believe it? You know, it would be the first time ever we were told the truth by an out of control government. You know, so why in the world would you believe them regarding their choice for head prosecutor in a persecution? But if this guy is by the book, assuming that he is by the book, what's with the rush? Well, to me, it's simple. You know, and I've said this in this video and I've said this in other videos. Jack Smith recognizes that there is probably zero chance, at least as it sits right now, that Joe Biden wins a second term. And I believe that Jack Smith feels like if he can get a conviction, he might be able to change enough minds to stop Donald Trump from winning. He knows that a conviction or not, right? He knows that Donald Trump will pardon himself if he wins a second term. But Jack Smith, I think he really does believe that turning Donald Trump into a convicted felon, even if it takes a weaponized, targeted political persecution to make that happen, he believes, I believe that he believes, that it'll change enough hearts and minds that Joe Biden remains president. Now, that is the actual textbook definition of election interference, if it's true. And, you know, really, what's it for? It's all for a win. It's all for tribal, partisan gamesmanship, because no one reasonable, no one could slow themselves down and be willing to pervert everything that they've given their lives to, like Jack Smith has done, in order to affect an election so that Joe Biden can remain president. Why would anyone reasonable want, after everything we've seen, just the job performance alone, want Joe Biden to remain president? I can't figure that out. But let me know in the comments if you guys can. I think it's just tribal partisanship. I think it's just to win. But that's just my take, guys. Let me know yours in the comments. And if you haven't already, please help us to continue to grow. Really, really appreciate the support. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. And we'll see you in the next one.